Alrighty, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Dauphney and I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library. And it is my pleasure to present Ryann Siclari, who is an elder law attorney who's going to be discussing today the financial aspects of planning and caring for somebody with Alzheimer's. And also on the call, we have Nicolette Vasco from the Alzheimer's Association New Jersey chapter. So before we jump in, just a few housekeeping items to go through. We will be taking your questions today, so please feel free to put them in the questions box at any time. You can email me if you wish, and my email address is on the screen there. Just like last session, there are the 5 handouts for today that you can download from the handouts section of the dashboard. Again, there will be a survey that'll be provided at the end of the webinar, as well as in a follow-up email. If you have time, we ask that you please complete it. It only takes a few minutes, and we always greatly appreciate your feedback. And if you're looking to get involved with Alzheimer's, you want to find out more about the disease and what you can do for you or a loved one, you can always check out the Alzheimer's Association New Jersey chapter's website right there. They have a lot of great information and fantastic ways to get involved through volunteering, fundraising, and things like that. One last thing before we jump in is just a brief overview of the GoToWebinar dashboard. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a desktop or a laptop. If you're using a mobile device, it's going to look different depending on the device that you're using, but all the features will still be there. If you don't see this, look for this orange box with a white arrow at the top left or right-hand side of your screen. That will open and close the dashboard. At any time, if you're having any problems, you can use this raise hand button here. That will alert me, and I will send you a message, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve that. There are 5 handouts for today, as I mentioned, in the handouts section here. So you can just click on the handout that you want. It should open up a download box, and you can download it to your computer. If you're having any problems downloading it, don't worry. Everybody will get copies of the handouts in a follow-up email that I will be setting. And lastly, there is the questions box here. Just type your question, hit send, and we'll be taking your questions at any time. So Ryan has given me permission to interrupt her if there's a pertinent question that should be answered. So that is everything that I have for you. So a few words from Nicolette before we turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Andrew, for having us, and Ryan for being here and for always doing such a great job. And we thank you for attending. I'm here from the Alzheimer's Association in Greater New Jersey, and we're so happy for the partnership. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, your family, your community, we are here for you. This is such an important topic, and we're so grateful to Ryan to be able to explain it to us because we know that legal and financial planning is something we all need to think about. And today we're going to talk about the financial issues. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're here to help.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicolette. So welcome everyone to part 2 of the Legal and Financial Planning for Alzheimer's Disease program. Today, we're going to spend this hour focusing on financial issues as opposed to the last hour last week where we focused on some of the legal issues. So with legal planning, it's important partly because it helps us make the plans for the type of care that we're going to need with someone who has dementia in the future. But another important piece involves how do we pay for that care? So we need to determine the type of care, but now we need to figure out how to pay for that care. So that's a big part of what we're going to look at now. So normally I would have a few videos for you to show, but we've had some technical difficulties with the videos. So I'm going to skip over them today and just kind of give you a general idea of what those sections are discussing. But the first video that we're skipping over here today basically just discusses why it's so important to get your financial plans in place well in advance of needing to pay for care. You know, when it comes to a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, paying for care can be a significant concern that comes up early on in the process. So assessing your financial situation early in the disease and coming up with a long-term financial plan can make this a little less stressful. as much as possible. So you can see the questions on this slide can help you move in that direction. So things you should ask yourselves include, how do you meet your current expenses? Do you use income from employment? Is it Social Security income, retirement accounts? So what are you using to meet your current expenses? What's the lowest level of care that might be needed? A home health aide, for example. What's the highest level of care that might be needed? Skilled nursing facility, for example. What financial resources do you have now that you'd be able to use to pay for this very broad range of care? And what additional resources might you need? So to assess the financial resources that you have now, you should think about some of the items on this slide. Are you or the person you're caring for still working? Do you have any retirement income, such as pensions or 401ks? What personal savings do you have? Do you have any stocks, bonds, or other property you'd be interested in selling? Other options of essentially taking your resources and leveraging them might be a reverse mortgage or long-term care insurance policies. They could help you pay for long-term care. So let's talk about those items in a little bit more detail first. So a reverse mortgage is a particular type of mortgage. It's different than your standard mortgage that you would get when you buy a house. Because essentially what the reverse mortgage is doing is taking the equity that you've built in your house and allowing you to functionally use that equity that you've built. So you might hear about the reverse mortgage as an option to help you pay for long-term care. So while they might be right for some people, there are a lot of cautions to keep in mind when it comes to reverse mortgage and exploring whether this option makes more sense for you or not. But all the pros and cons should be weighed very carefully with the reverse mortgage. So basically, they are designed to help individuals who are 62 or older, like I said, by converting that equity in their home into some type of income stream. It's called a reverse mortgage because the lender is the person paying the homeowner rather than the homeowner paying the lender. That's why it's reverse mortgage. And there are advantages and disadvantages to consider. So one of the advantages of getting a reverse mortgage is that you don't have to pay monthly payments. So a home equity line of credit, for example, is you're taking equity out of your home and typically getting a large lump sum, but you got to make monthly payments on that right away. Whereas the reverse mortgage, you don't have to repay that mortgage until one of the repayment requirements are met, and we'll discuss those in a moment. But the money you get is tax-free, so you're not paying income tax on the reverse mortgage payment. And you can use it in whatever way you want. You know, you can use it to pay for long-term care. You can use it to pay your monthly expenses. But the thing you got to understand about the reverse mortgage is at some point it will need to be repaid. But as long as at least one of the borrowers is still remaining in the home, that reverse mortgage does not have to be repaid. So that is kind of one of the benefits, is that one person is there who is one of the people on the reverse mortgage, then there's no requirement to be repaid at that time. So there's no special income requirements. So you don't have to make a certain level of income in order to be eligible for this. You're not going to lose access to your Social Security or your Medicare benefits by getting a reverse mortgage. But one of the cautions is that the reverse mortgage might affect government means tested benefits. So Social Security, disability, and retirement, they are not necessarily looking at what other income you have, what other resources you have. Whereas Medicaid and supplemental security income, for example, do look at your assets. And a reverse mortgage that month, if it's a monthly income stream, or if you get it in a lump sum, those things may actually affect your government benefits. So it's an analysis that needs to be done before you get the reverse mortgage as to whether this makes sense from the perspective of potential future government benefits. Another potential caution is that reverse mortgages tend to have very high upfront closing costs, and they can vary greatly from company to company. But more often than not, if the reverse mortgage is intended to be a short-term solution, it probably doesn't make sense to incur those very high closing costs. Reverse mortgages tend to be something that is more of a long-term solution, but the person needs to understand that by taking the equity out of their home, they are in effect reducing the amount of inheritance that will eventually go to their family. So if that's the goal, is to stay in the home and it doesn't matter if there's anything going to the beneficiaries, then that's okay. But it's part of the analysis that needs to be considered. Another problem with the reverse mortgage is that if you are the sole homeowner and you go into an assisted living or nursing facility for over a year, that's treated as if you're no longer in the home and you must repay the mortgage at that time. And that can put you in a little bit of a sticky situation. If you don't have the cash to repay the mortgage and the mortgage has been called because you're in a skilled nursing facility for over a year, then you're in a position where you have no choice but to sell the home in order to repay this mortgage at that time. And the same holds true for if you should pass away, right? If there's no person who's on the mortgage living in the home due to death, that mortgage has to be repaid at that time too. And again, if the goal is to pass a particular property down to heirs, a reverse mortgage may not be a good solution. So it's out there as an option, and I would encourage you to discuss it if it's something that you think might behoove you, but you would definitely want to get the advice of someone who's familiar with all of these different options and government benefits planning before you engage in the reverse mortgage. So the next item that we want to talk about as a potential avenue for payment of these long-term care costs is long-term care insurance. So if you purchased long-term care insurance before you or the person you care for receives the diagnosis of dementia, this is a really valuable resource to consider while making plans for care. But you've got to look at your policy, your actual insurance plan, to make sure you understand what's covered, what's not covered, and how benefits are paid. So some of the questions on this slide can help you kind of analyze your policy to see how it really impacts your situation. So some of the questions you can look at is Alzheimer's disease covered? Now, there can be exclusions in the policy, but more often than not, the exclusions tend to cover what kinds of care that are being covered. So let's look through the rest of these questions. When can the person with dementia begin collecting benefits? Is there an exclusion period? Sometimes you must wait 3 months after you start experiencing certain symptoms before you can start using this benefit. What's the daily benefit rate? It could be $100 a day or $300 a day. It varies from policy to policy. How long will they be paid? Is there a maximum lifetime payout? So that's kind of two different parts, right? You might have a 5-year policy that's going to pay $200 a day, or you might have a policy that's no duration of time, but pays out a maximum of $200,000. So it just depends, again, on your policy. What kinds of cares, that's one of the things I had mentioned before, will the policy cover? Some policies are strictly limited to nursing facility only. Some policies will cover in-home care as well. So it, again, just depends on your policy. Are there tax implications for receiving the benefits? And usually that has to do with how the benefits are paid out to the person. So the goal here is you must just have a good understanding of when you can take advantage of this policy. So that way, when the time comes, you're ready to submit the claim to the long-term care insurance company. And 9 times out of 10, the policies come into effect based on your care level. So it's not a diagnosis-based policy. It's a what kind of help do you need based policy. And a lot of times it's you need assistance with a certain numbers of activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, feeding, where you need to be supervised for those things, which is common with Alzheimer's. So the policy itself will dictate when it comes into play. Now, when it comes to buying long-term care insurance, after symptoms of dementia appear, it's usually no longer possible to purchase a long-term care insurance policy. There are, the reality is for these insurance companies is if you have dementia, you are more likely to need long-term care for a longer period of time than someone who does not have dementia. So it's not a good financial opportunity for them to issue a policy to someone who already has symptoms of dementia. So many times when you're applying for these policies, they have a specific questionnaire related to dementia or symptoms of dementia. Family history of dementia, for example, is part of that questionnaire. So it can be more difficult as you progress with having a diagnosis or symptoms to get this type of insurance. So moving on to talk about, we're really here to talk about broad financial ways that you can deal with having Alzheimer's or an Alzheimer's or dementia-related diagnosis. And there are some deductions on your income taxes that you may be able to use to kind of, I don't want to say ease, but help with the burden of paying for Alzheimer's care. So if you or a family member are a caregiver, you may qualify for both federal and state deductions or credits on your income taxes. So it's not super common, but if you are taking care of a chronically ill person, you can qualify as a family caregiver for federal and state income tax deductions. You might be able to deduct your expenses that are on this slide, like personal care items, like adult diapers, for example, home improvements, in-home care. All of these things can be deductible on your income taxes as a medical expense. But if you have to reach the minimum of the medical expenses in order to be able to deduct these things. So it's important that you keep good records of all of the medical expenses you're paying for, receipts. That way you can better provide these to your accountant, because that is the person who will ultimately be the one to make sure you get all the proper deductions going forward is your CPA. So many states provide help with covering the cost of Alzheimer's care. And these deductions, vary state by state, but you may be able to deduct, as we discussed, medical expenses, long-term care insurance premiums. So not just the actual cost of long-term care, but the insurance premiums if you have a policy. You can get the caregiver tax credit, and in certain cases, you can get the child and dependent care tax credits. So in New Jersey, you can deduct medical expenses if they exceed 2% of your gross income, and that includes long-term care facilities, insurance premiums, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, etc. And federally, that cap is 10%. Your medical expenses must exceed 10%. Now, it's important to look at different care options with in deciding how we're going to pay for these things, because they're going to be different costs, right? So there's formal care options and there's informal care options. So there would normally be a video here talking about informal care options, but we will skip that and just go right into discussing some of these things since we're having some audio troubles. So it's hard sometimes to ask for help, right? And you are in a situation where sometimes you just need help, or you might have people who are offering to help, but you're not really sure what to have them do for you. So one of the things you can do is try to keep a running list. You know, as you do things for someone, keep a list. Say, you know, I checked the mail, I ran to the post office, I got their groceries, I washed their hair, anything you do, made their lunch, anything that you do, write it down. That way, when someone comes up to you and says, hey, is there anything I can help you with? You might have a good place where you can go for some ideas. And, you know, some people are more comfortable saying, well, why don't I sit with your loved one who has Alzheimer's while you go to the grocery store? Or they might not necessarily be comfortable at staying with the person, so maybe they can go to the grocery store for you. So, you know, it's not just hands-on assistance with the person with Alzheimer's who is a way to help. There's lots of ways to help. And one of the ways, you know, the Alzheimer's Association has a care team calendar on their website where you can kind of coordinate all these things, where you can say, Susie's doing this on Tuesday, my friend Bob is doing this on Friday, and you can coordinate all those little things. That way everybody kind of knows what everyone is doing. So it's a really good way to just keep track of all that informal care that you're not paying for, but that is immensely helpful. So there are other formal care options through a variety of different government programs. So the Older Americans Act provides quite a bit of funding for a lot of programs, and they offer funds for supportive services like transportation, adult daycare, legal services, nutrition services like meals at a senior center, home delivered meals, and it also funds family caregiving support, including information and assistance, counseling, support groups, caregiver trainings. It also funds respite, which is a huge relief to many families. And it includes community education, health screenings, immunizations. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all of the ways that the Older Americans Act helps fund. But the bottom line is to find out the most about these services that may be available through this funding is to contact your area agency on aging. So here, every county in New Jersey has an area agency on aging. Sometimes they are called the Office on Aging or the Aging and Disability Resource Center, ADRC. So they're all different, but it all means the same thing. It's the Area Agency on Aging. So you can even Google, you know, Ocean County Area Agency on Aging, or Mercer County Area Agency on Aging, or in Mercer County, it's the Office on Aging. You can search that and you'll see contact information for the Office on Aging, and you can contact them and discuss with them programs that you might be eligible for. They're very, very helpful. So when it comes to paying for care, generally, there's two big programs that we look at. There's Medicare and there's Medicaid. And I see a lot of times people get them confused. So we're going to spend a fair bit of time today just talking about these two programs, what they are, what they cover, and how they're different. So on the screen here, you can see a little side-by-side that kind of starts to break down the differences between the two programs. So Medicare is government health insurance. for people who qualify. Medicaid, although provides health insurance, it's more of a government assistance program. One you pay into, one you do not. Age-based Medicare, or really it's age or disability-based, is Medicare, whereas Medicaid is needs-based. You have to financially qualify for Medicaid, and we'll talk about what those qualifications are shortly. Medicare is a federally administered program, whereas Medicaid, although partially funded by the federal government, is administered state by state. Medicare does not pay for long-term nursing home care. It might pay for a short-term rehab stay, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it does not pay for long-term care, whereas Medicaid does pay for long-term care. And that difference is probably the most critical of them. So let's explore Medicare in a little bit more detail. So Medicare, as I said, is a health insurance program for people who are over the age of 65, people who are under 65 but have been determined disabled by the Social Security Administration and have been disabled for a period of 24 months. So if you have someone who has, let's say they have early onset Alzheimer's, they are declared disabled by the Social Security Administration at the age of 60. When they're 62, they can start receiving Medicare, even though they're not yet 65 because they've had that disability determination for 2 years. And another group of people who are Medicare eligible are people with any age who have end-stage renal disease or kidney failure and are on dialysis. So Medicare is broken up into a variety of parts. You have Medicare Part A, which is commonly known as the hospital insurance. Medicare Part B, which is your medical insurance, like your doctors. And then you have Part D, which is your prescription drug coverage. This combination is known commonly as Original Medicare. And we're going to get into the details of each one of these parts. So Medicare Part A typically covers the list of services on this slide. So if you're going to be having surgery that requires you to be inpatient at a hospital, this is the part that's going to cover that hospital stay. But the piece that really becomes applicable a lot of times with someone with Alzheimer's is the skilled nursing care for a short-term rehabilitation. So that benefit basically works like this. Medicare will cover up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility if you meet a variety of requirements. So the first requirement is that you must be hospitalized first, and yet you must have been admitted for 3 consecutive nights. So you can't have been there for observation. You must have been admitted to the hospital for 3 consecutive days. Then you must be discharged within a certain number of days to a skilled nursing facility for rehabilitation for the reason you were in the hospital. So if you are going to rehab because you just need some help with your activities of daily living, that is not going to be sufficient. You need to be receiving skilled rehab services for the reason you were in the hospital. So a lot of times you see there's commonly a fall. Someone has a fall, they break a bone, and they end up in the hospital for a few days. Then they go to rehab thereafter. In that situation, Medicare Part A will cover up to 100 days. The first 20 days are paid in full. Day 21 through 100 have a copay of approximately $185 a day. Now, we're going to get into Medigop insurance that might cover that copay, but if you only have Medicare Parts A and B, you have no other supplemental insurance, there's a copay starting on day 21. Now, you're not guaranteed 100 days. So you could be there for a few days, and Medicare, one of the rules says that you have the skilled nursing care you're receiving must at minimum keep you at status quo, if not improve. So if you've reached a point where the skilled rehab you're receiving isn't able to keep you at status quo, then they can say, we're not giving you the 100 days, we're stopping it at day 20 or day 30 or so on. So there's no requirement that you get the full 100 days. There's also a very minimal home health care option. Typically, the rules for that require that you are homebound and that you need skilled nursing care for some type of injury is typically the case. And it only offers the home health aid or the skilled nursing care to come and provide you the need for that particular thing. It's not going to give you 24-hour home health aid assistance. It's just not part of Medicare. And then it also provides a hospice as well. So how does it work? Well, when you work and you work at your job, part of the taxes, many taxes that we pay as employees that come out of our check is a Medicare tax. And you pay into the system, so that way when you are the appropriate age or disability, you are eligible for Medicare. And that's 10 years is how long you have to pay into the system before you are eligible. And you can be eligible under a spouse as well if your spouse pays in for 10 years. If you've paid in to the system for the minimum period of time, then there's no premium for Medicare Part A. You get this hospital insurance free of charge if you've paid in. If you don't meet those requirements, then there's the premium for Part A is about $400 a month. So for many people who don't qualify for Medicare, they usually get different insurance like Medicaid or marketplace policy instead of Medicare because the premiums are pretty high if you didn't qualify. But for Medicare Part A, there's no copay. There could be co-payments, there could be co-insurance, and you may have deductibles just depending on the procedure. And that is where our Medicare supplement plan will come into place, which we'll get into in a minute. So Medicare Part B covers the things you see on the screen here, which, physician services, so your doctor's visits, your outpatient tests, lab tests, blood work, MRIs, CAT scans, those types of things. If you need durable medical equipment like a medical bed or a walker, this is all part of your Medicare Part B service. And then there's also preventive services like mammograms and things of that nature are also part of Medicare Part B as well. So how does this work? Well, when you become Medicare eligible at age 65, you're automatically enrolled in Medicare Part A, and you can also register for Medicare Part B as well. If you do not register for Medicare Part B when you are eligible, you can have a lifetime penalty associated with your premiums. Now, if you're still working and you have accreditable coverage through your employer, you don't have to register for Medicare Part B upon turning 65. But once you no longer are working full-time, you need to register in order to avoid having that penalty applied to your premiums. So again, just like Medicare Part A, you can get this upon turning 65, or if you've been collecting disability for 24 months. Now, unlike Medicare Part A, there is a monthly premium for Medicare Part B, and that's for everyone unless you qualify for a separate program to cover your Medicare premiums. But most everyone pays $148.50 a month. Now, it could be higher if you have very high income, but most people, it's the $148.50, and that changes annually. And with Medicare Part B, it covers about 80% of the cost. The other 20% is your responsibility. So that's why most people look into getting a Medigop policy. If they have traditional Medicare Parts A and B, they would also have a Medigop or supplemental health insurance policy to cover that gap. So what's not covered? So it's important to understand what's covered is just as important as to understand what's not covered. So no dental care, dentures, cosmetic surgery, acupuncture, hearing aids, and for purposes of our conversation today, no long-term care. And so what I mean by that is custodial care. So you're at the long-term care facility, but you're not getting rehab. You're not seeing the occupational therapist. You're not seeing the rehab. You are there for helping with bathing, dressing, eating, getting in and out of bed. Those are activities of daily living. That's custodial care. And that is simply not covered by your Medicare insurance. So the symptoms that someone has as part of the later stages of dementia aren't part of what Medicare is intended to cover. So we had also said there's Medicare Part D, which is your prescription drug coverage. And this is a separate plan. Now, unlike your Medicare Parts A and B, which are, you'll have your red, white, and blue Medicare card, Medicare Part D is covered through separate health insurance companies. It's like a managed care plan. So basically you have to apply for a Part D policy through one of these companies. Now, every company is governed by the Medicare rules, but your premiums are going to be different company to company. Your deductibles, your co-pays, all those things are going to be different policy to policy. But what's most important is when you are applying for one of these policies, you got to look at what drugs are covered. These are called formularies. So every plan has its own formulary, and you really want to go through the Medicare.gov website, which will give you the opportunity to put your specific prescriptions in, and then it'll give you a list of Medicare Part D plans that cover the majority of your drugs, if not all of them. So it'll help you pick the plan that's offers you the most coverage. And once you pick a plan, you can stay with that plan, but annually during open enrollment, which is from October to December, you can change your Medicare Part D plan. So if you're not happy with the plan, or really what should happen is every year you put your drugs in, check to see if there's a more favorable plan or if the formularies have changed. So every year you check, make sure the one you're in still makes the most sense, because it may not. And this has a separate premium from your Medicare Part B. And it's, it can range. It just depends on the policy you get. Some have more coverage and are more expensive, but it can range anywhere from $10 a month to, $100 a month. It just depends on the policy that you select. But it's very similar to Medicare Part B in that when you are eligible, because you no longer have health insurance through an employer that's covering it, you need to register for your Part D plan, because if you don't do it when you're eligible, you get a penalty, and that is an additional amount you have to pay on your monthly premium forever. It doesn't just go away at any point. So if you don't register when you're eligible, it's a penalty in perpetuity. So now you notice that when I originally started talking about Medicare, I said A, B, and D, and you're probably like, what about Part C? So now we're going to talk about Part C, because Part C is a little bit different, because A, B, and D go together. C is kind of its own freestanding. You either have A, B, and D, or you have C. So C it's an alternative. It's a Medicare Advantage or Medicare Part C plan. And it basically combines all of the things from A, B, and D through a health insurance company, like a managed care organization. So you might have your Medicare Advantage plan through AARP or Horizon, or you would be through a specific insurance company. You pay a monthly premium. And again, from plan to plan, your out-of-pocket expenses are going to vary, whereas Medicare A and B, it's set regardless, because there's no different plans to choose from. But the benefit, there's pros and cons to Medicare Part C. You know, one of the cons is that you have to often get pre-approval for procedures. You have to stay in the network doctors, so it limits your flexibility in that regard. And depending on the plan you have, your copays might be more. So if you have pretty significant health issues, typically the Plan C is not going to be the best option for you. But it's important to know it's out there, because one of the things that the Part C offers that traditional Medicare doesn't are some of those little ancillary things that we were talking about, like vision or dental, or some of them offer some additional supplies that you might need. So it just depends on what's your health condition, what is important to you as to whether a Plan C would make sense for you or original Medicare makes the most sense. But again, the out-of-pocket costs can be higher here. So I would encourage you, if you have questions about which one makes the most sense, is to contact our state health insurance counseling and assistance program, or SHIP. New Jersey SHIP is great. I've sent many of people to New Jersey SHIP to say, I mean, any number of questions. Should I stay with Medicare Parts A and B or switch to Medicare Part C? Which prescription drug plan should I get? I'm having trouble choosing. I don't understand all these plans. Can you help me? Any question having any tangential relation to Medicare, the state SHIP program can help you with. So you can just Google New Jersey SHIP, State Health Insurance Program, and the numbers will come up. They have offices in every county, and they would be able to answer your questions about these anything related to Medicare. And it's free. So if I didn't already say that, it's free, and it's so, so valuable. So I've mentioned a few times having a supplemental plan, and so I do encourage you, if you have original Medicare, so Medicare Parts A and B, to have a supplement plan. And the supplement plans are held through private insurance companies, but they're regulated by the government. So you have all the plans are designated by letter. So you have plan A, B, F, K, L. There's a whole bunch of numbers that are associated. And depending on the letter of the plan, that shows there's which benefits are covered and how much. So for example, some Medicare supplements don't pay the skilled nursing facility copay. Some do. So it's important to have a good understanding of what plan you're getting and what it covers. And again, the SHIP, New Jersey SHIP, can assist you with seeing which benefits are really valuable for you, because obviously the more benefits you get, the higher monthly premium is going to be with your Medicare supplement. And when it comes to the Medicare supplement, it's also really important that when you become Medicare eligible and you get your Medicare Part B, that you register for your supplement at the same time. Because if you don't get it when you become eligible for Medicare and you wait, there's only very limited circumstances when you can get a supplement plan and that they're not allowed to look at pre-existing conditions. So if you don't follow into one of those limited exceptions and you didn't get your supplement plan right from the outset, you can find yourself in a situation where they're allowed to look at pre-existing conditions and they either jack up your premiums or they deny you outright. So get the supplement at the beginning because they cannot look at pre-existing conditions at that point. And if you have a Medicare Plan C, by the way, you don't have a supplement. Your Medicare Plan C is meant to cover everything, whereas the supplement helps supplement your Parts A and B. And again, that's why, by the way, the Part C has some higher out-of-pocket costs than your A and B combined with your supplement, because you've essentially got two different insurances covering. You've got one covering 80%, one trying to cover the other 20%. So your out-of-pockets can be smaller with the combination of A, B, and a supplement. So my favorite part of the program, Medicaid. This is probably the most complicated piece of the program, and I'll try to get through it as quickly as I can, but the Medicaid program is important for anyone who could potentially need long-term care, because it is the only insurance program that covers long-term care. And like I said, I don't mean like a short-term rehab, I mean long-term care. And when I say long-term care, I don't just mean nursing homes, right? Nursing homes, assisted living, and in-home care. So if you need a home health aide, Medicaid can cover that. They're never going to cover 24-hour care, but they can get that home health aide in there to supplement the family's caregiving in a way to keep someone home as long as possible. So eligibility for Medicaid is based on two factors, two tests. There's a medical need test, I call it clinical eligibility, and there's a financial test, so income and asset eligibility. In order to be eligible clinically, you need assistance with 3 or more activities of daily living, or need supervision in queuing in 3 or more activities of daily living. So someone with Alzheimer's, again, might be able to dress themselves, but they might need to be told, hey, it's cold out, you need to put a coat on, those flip-flops aren't good for this season. So that's a supervision in queuing relating to dressing. So 3 activities of daily living to be Medicaid eligible, and you have the income and asset tests. The income threshold for Medicaid eligibility depends on whether you're single or married. If you're a single person, the income cap is $2,382 a month. And actually, it's the same if you're married. The only difference is we don't look at the well spouse's income. We're only looking at the income of the disabled person. So if their income is below $2,382, they're good. If their income exceeds the $2,382, and I mean Social Security, pensions, if it exceeds that, you're still okay. You just have to take extra steps to establish something called a qualified income trust in order to be eligible based on that income. So $2,382 a month, but if you're over, we can still get you eligibility. We just have to take some extra steps. And then assets, for a single person, they can have $2,000. For a married couple, the institutionalized or disabled spouse can have $2,000, and the community spouse or well spouse can have about $130,000. Now, there are steps we can take to preserve assets. So if you have assets in excess of those figures, I really encourage you to meet with an elder law attorney to talk about your financial options, because there may be steps you can take to preserve assets if that is something that is important to you, rather than spending them on the costs of long-term care. So just understand that if you're over those limits, you should speak to an elder law attorney to talk about some options. So once you meet eligibility and Medicaid picks up, they pay the provider directly. So if you have a nursing home, Medicaid will pay the nursing home directly. If you are having a home health aide come in, Medicaid will pay the home health aide. And in New Jersey, we have a great program called the Personal Preference Program, or PPP. That is where Medicaid will actually pay your family members to be your caregivers. So if you have a child who's caring for you, if you at home, you get on this Medicaid program, and the PPP program can pay them for being your caregiver. So step one is you got to get your Medicaid eligibility, then you can get these programs. So as I said a couple of times, New Jersey offers home and community-based services. So again, you get the home health aid, but there's actually a whole package of benefits that New Jersey Medicaid gives someone who's home. You can get home delivered meals, you can get the personal emergency response system, or the Life Alert, medication dispensing devices, home modifications in some circumstances, vehicle modifications in some circumstances. So the package of benefits to support people in the community is actually quite robust in New Jersey. So I know I'm running low on time, so I'm going to keep moving along here. When it comes to applying for Medicaid, when you have too much money, Medicaid wants to see you spend down your assets. And unfortunately, you can't just spend it on everything. So the reason we say spend down with caution is because we don't want you giving your assets away and being assessed a penalty without understanding what is going to happen. So there's a whole lot of rules in place to protect spouses called the spousal impoverishment rules. So again, the spouse is allowed to keep about $130,000. There are some other things we can do. You can keep your home, your primary residence, if one spouse is living there. But I caution you, because if the well spouse has the house with the sick spouse's name still on the deed, and that well spouse dies, now that whole house goes to the spouse who has Alzheimer's, and it's subject to their cost of care. So, you know, if we have two spouses on a deed, we really want to take the sick spouse off that deed. So there are still steps you have to take, even when an asset doesn't count for your original Medicaid application. When it comes to the application, though, you also have to supply 5 years of account statement. So you can't just go in, fill out the application, you're good to go. You've got to supply 5 years of records so they can go through them and look at them and go line by line to see if you gifted or transferred any amount of money to anyone else. They want to make sure you did that spend down how they want you to do it. So I, again, encourage you to meet with an elder law attorney to walk through how to do this. And in New Jersey, you can apply at the local Board of Social Services, and they have their application online. Again, before applying, meet with a lawyer. And again, when you are eligible for Medicaid, it does cover nursing facilities, but your nursing facility has to accept Medicaid. So I would encourage you, when you're investigating skilled nursing facilities, that's one of the first questions you should ask. When do you accept Medicaid? Is there a period of time that I'm required to pay out of my own pocket before you will accept Medicaid? And what happens here when I run out of money and I'm applying for Medicaid? So those are all questions. There are rules, federal rules to support that, but those are questions you can start with. And we're going to just go through our videos here since we don't have. So another benefit that might be out there is for veterans. If you are a veteran or you are the spouse of a veteran, you may be eligible for a monthly pension amount depending on how much care you need. This is, again, based on assets and income and medical costs. So I would encourage you to meet with an elder law attorney if you or your spouse is a veteran. And there's no length of time. It's typically based on when you served, not how long you served. If you're working when you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, you got to make the hard decision of, do you continue to work? Do you stop working? You know, you may have significant benefits that you don't want to give up if you are working. For example, you might have short-term disability, long-term disability, certain medical leaves. So before you decide that you want to stop working, make sure you analyze the benefits that you're receiving to see if it is the most logical solution. And you really need to talk to your boss, right? You need to explain to them what's going on. You have to ask for accommodations. They're not just going to know that something's wrong. If your performance starts changing, they might just assume you're doing a bad job if they don't know the situation and provide those accommodations. So if you ask for the accommodations based on a legitimate disability, there are laws in place that require them to accommodate those things. But if you're not telling them and asking for those accommodations, they won't know to give those accommodations. And another benefit that's hugely important is Social Security disability. If you are not full retirement age, which for many people is between the age of 66 and 67, depending on your year and month of birth, if you haven't reached full retirement, but you're no longer able to work based on your disability, you can apply for Social Security disability. And there may be a spousal benefit or benefit to your children as well, depending on their age. If you have minor children, for example, they can be eligible for a benefit if you begin collecting Social Security disability. And there's also a compassionate allowance to help people who have early onset Alzheimer's to get a disability determination easier than it used to be. And again, so SSI and SSDI are similar in the sense that you collect this based on age or disability, but SSDI, you've worked in and paid into the Social Security system, whereas supplemental security income, or SSI, you have not worked and paid into the system. So they're going to look at your assets. So you have to have $2,000 or less to be SSI eligible, of resources to be SSI eligible. They're not going to give you that monthly benefit if you have resources that are higher, because it's a means tested. You didn't pay into the system. And I'm running up on my time. I know I tried to fly through that last of it here, but there is some resources on the alzheimers.org, alz.org website, tons of resources. So I encourage you to go there and just explore the website to get some guidance and assistance. You can get involved by going through the website. And if you have further questions beyond what I was able to get through here today, or specific questions about your unique situation, please feel free to contact me, and my information is on the slide here. So if there are any questions, I know we're at 1 o'clock here, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and I hope you learned at least one thing today.
Great, thank you, Ryann. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to type them in the questions box and send them on over, and we'll answer them for you. Let's see, first question. If Medicaid won't pay for 24-hour home care, how much does it generally provide in terms of hourly care for dementia patients? Oop, looks like your mic's off.
How about now? That's a great question. So when you become Medicaid eligible and you say to Medicaid, I want a home health aide, I need what they call personal care assistance. What they will do is they will have a nurse come out and do an assessment to see how many hours of help you need. So what the assessment says is it lists all these activities, and it says you need 2 minutes a day help with this, putting on your shoes. You need 6 minutes a day for this. So it just very strategic, goes through and assesses amount of time. I would say, so it's strictly going to be based on your particular needs. And assuming you have high needs, I think 40 hours a week is probably typical of max benefits. I mean, there are allowed to exceed 40 hours a week in unusual circumstances, but it's very unusual to get much higher than that. Any other questions? That was a great question, by the way.
Ryan, this is Nicolette. I had a thought about the informal care. Can you advise people? I know that you talked about the look back, and if someone is paying someone maybe under the table, they have someone that's a neighbor, and that's so great. Of course, we want to take all the care and the help we can get, but just kind of being cautious as to the liability behind that, or the possible look back that you're gifting money or whatever.
Yeah. And so what Nicolette is talking about is when you apply for the Medicaid and you do the 5-year look back, you give them 5 years account statements, and Medicaid says, we see like $200 a week coming out to the same person every week. We're going to treat that as you gifting them money. And you say to them, well, they were helping me take care of mom. It was for a service. They're going to say, well, where's the contract? Like, where's that in writing? Where's the employment paperwork? Where's the caregiver agreement? Let's say it's a child and the child's not working because they're helping take care of mom and the mom's giving them money every week. They're going to want to see that in writing. And if you can't provide it, then they're likely going to assess you a penalty and say, well, we're treating that as a gift because you didn't put it in writing ahead of time. So the under the table caregiving, family members in particular being caregivers and being paid, can be a real problem if it is not properly documented in writing ahead of time. You can't do it after the fact and say, oh, that old money that was given, that was for us taking care, because Medicaid has rules that say if you didn't have the contract in place, you clearly were doing that out of the goodness of your heart. So anything you can do to document a situation in writing helps you when it comes to applying for Medicaid. Another great example is if mom or dad live with you and pay you rent, they pay their share of the house expenses. That's great if you have a properly documented lease. If you don't, then Medicaid will treat that as a gift. So it's just a matter of documenting all the things that you are doing. Thank you, Nicolette.
All right. Who can help you develop a financial plan? Is it an elder care attorney or a financial advisor with long-term care experience?
That's an interesting question. So either path is better than doing nothing. So, as an elder law attorney, my first instinct is to say, of course, an elder law attorney, of course. But I've met a lot of really good financial advisors over the year who are excellent with coming up with a long-term strategy from a financial perspective. So my instinct is actually both. Both people are critical in creating a solid financial plan, because the financial advisor is going to be able to help you leverage the money you have, whereas the elder law attorney is going to be able to help you leverage other benefits like government benefits in conjunction with the assets that you already have. So you really, if you can get both of these people, both a financial advisor and an elder law attorney on board to analyze your assets, that would be ideal, in my opinion. Again, we focus on different things. The financial advisor is going to focus on what you have. We as elder law attorneys are going to focus on how to get you more benefits and how we can leverage the government programs. Either way, you want to make sure the persons that you're working with, whether they're the financial advisor or the elder law attorney, have experience dealing with long-term care issues. Because simply being a financial advisor or an attorney doesn't give you the experience in this realm that we really want people to have. Great question.
I'm buying long-term care now. Should I buy for 3 or 4 years? And do you have a seminar on long-term care issues?
Okay, so there's no right answer here. What I can tell you is the longer the long-term care insurance policy, the better. But that doesn't mean it's financially feasible for you. So there's more to it than just looking at the number of years available of the policy. We want to look at the daily benefit rate as well. But if you can afford, I mean, to me, the gold standard is 5 years, right? Because if you need long-term care, you get sick, you need long-term care. You start using your 5 years of long-term care insurance. That day, I would take all your money and put it into an irrevocable trust to start the 5-year look back on that money. While your long-term care insurance policy is paying, I'm protecting all that money of yours over here in this irrevocable trust. By the end of your 5-year long-term care insurance policy, we apply for Medicaid. They don't see any of those transfers because it's past the 5-year look back. So if you have a 5-year long-term care insurance policy, that's gold standard. So the closer to the 5 years you can get, the better from a government benefits planning perspective. As far as a long-term care seminar, I don't think that the Alzheimer's Association has a specific to that, but me at my law firm, we do have seminars on our website on that topic at porzioplanning.com, P-O-R-Z-I-O planning.com. And if you're interested in Medicaid, I have several Medicaid planning seminars on that website that I've done.
Well, we can give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody else has any questions. What is the most common maybe issue that you run into as people are trying to plan for somebody or are trying to rearrange things with somebody for Alzheimer's to get care?
So I want to narrow it to the financial piece because the legal planning piece, obviously we run into quite often, people not having documents in place. But when it comes to the financial piece, the most common issue we run into is, people not planning in advance, right? They wait till they need long-term care, then try to get all of their financial pieces in place. They're looking to apply for Medicaid, but at this point, you don't have necessarily the time to preserve assets that you may have had you started looking at this in the earlier stages of Alzheimer's or dementia. So that would be my one real big takeaway, is start having these conversations now. Even if you decide, you know what, I don't want to do any of these advanced planning strategies financially, I'm okay with the idea of just simply spending down until I'm eligible. That's okay, but at least you have the information and you're making an educated decision as opposed to, well, I didn't know I had any other options, so I just spent my money on long-term care costs until it was all gone. So plan ahead.
All right, well, looks like that is everything that we have today. So Ryan, thank you for a fantastic part 2 to this, jam-packed with information. Everybody, so just let everybody know that this program is being recorded, so the link will be shared as long as with a recap of both parts 1 and 2. That'll be sent out later this week, so look in your email for that. Ryan's contact information is on the screen there, and it'll be in the follow-up email that I send out as well. So if you do have any questions that you think of later, you can certainly reach out to her. And thank you to Nicolette from the Alzheimer's Association for arranging this program for us too. I encourage everyone to check out what the Alzheimer's Association has to offer in terms of resources, support groups, getting involved. They have fantastic things there. So thank you, Nicolette. And I'd just like to send everybody out with be safe, be well, and hopefully we can see you soon.
Thank you.